Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And I'm Jason Red, White, and Blue Inman. Welcome to your Mind University, where we are the podcast Geek History Lesson, where we teach you about one character, conceit, or weapon from pop culture. And today we have a very important, all-patriotic lesson that is going to throw you through the ringer, punch you through Eastern Europe, and maybe solve the Great Depression. We don't know. It might do all three. Who's the character that we're talking about on today's Geek History Lesson, Ashley?
Today we are talking about the leader of the Avengers, Mr. Steve Rogers, a.k.a. Captain America, but specifically the Steve Rogers version of Captain America.
Because there have been more than one.
There have. Yep. And I would like to say that this episode has been requested by several people across Geek History Lesson
like who?
History, including Tumblr user As Subtle as a Splinter.
That's a great Tumblr name.
It is.
All right.
And James Steinberg and his awesome son Tobias, who dressed up as Nightcrawler for Halloween once.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so this is going out to all of our three amazing TAs this week and next week, because this is going to be a very lengthy lesson, so we, like some characters in the past, have elected to break it up into multiple parts.
Wait a minute.
Whoa.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me already, before we've even started the History 101, that this is a two-part episode on Captain America?
2 whole episodes on Captain America, 2 whole hours.
Well, you know, all I have to say to that is, all those who chose to oppose his wiki must yield.
That's right.
All right, cool. Let's hop right into the lesson if you're ready, Professor Ashley.
I am totally ready.
And let's go to the first section of the podcast, the 10-cent origin, where we're going to give you a basic Cliff Notes version of everything you need to know about this character in a quick, handy-dandy red, white, and blue. Everything today is going to be red, white, and blue appearance, so you can say it at any U.S. military cocktail parties that you might go to.
There you go. I'm actually going to argue that most of these notes are written in black and white, but there you go. So the 10-cent origin of Steve Rogers is that, of course, he is a Marvel Comics character, and his full name is actually Stephen Grant Rogers.
Never knew his middle name. Interesting.
I didn't know that either. Most comic characters don't have middle names, but some of the older ones tend to.
Yes.
He has also been known at different times as Nomad and the Captain. More on that to come.
The Captain.
His first appearance was in Captain America Comics #1.
Hey, that's pretty simple.
Which is great. In March
cool.
of 1941, which still makes him younger than both Batman and Superman. He was created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby.
And I believe he is the Human Torch might beat him, the original Human Torch.
The original Human Torch does beat him.
Okay, so he's one of the oldest Marvel heroes.
Yes,
Got
he
it.
is. His team affiliations have included All Winners Squad, which
great name.
Never heard of before and found almost nothing on. The Avengers Unity Division, Illuminati, Invaders, Landau, Luckman, and Lake.
It's an X-Men weird society.
It's an intergalactic holding company / law firm.
Hey, when you have to invest, it's best to choose different galaxies.
I guess. New Avengers, Project Rebirth, Redeemers, S.H.I.E.L.D., Secret Avengers, Secret Defenders, and of course the United States Army. And yes, thank you for your service. And his
Captain
abilities,
America, thank you for your service.
Jason Inman, thank you for your service.
No, thank you for your service, fictional character.
And his abilities as a super soldier means that he has enhanced physical capabilities, enhanced mental faculties, master martial art skills, and hand-to-hand combat skills, mastery of various weapons. He is a master strategist, tactician, and field commander, and wields a vibranium alloy shield.
Yes, and you must wield. You must yield
to the wielding of the shield.
When he wields it, you got to yield.
Yes. So let's move on to the meet cute part of the podcast.
The meet cute part of the podcast is a section of the podcast which we stole from Romantic Comedies, where we're going to tell you where we first encountered the character of Captain America.
Yes.
Ashley, where did you first encounter Steve Rogers?
Okay, so like a lot of the more traditional older legacy characters, I've always kind of known who Captain America was.
Yeah, you kind of always knew there was a dude dressed as the American flag.
Yeah, but the first time I really started like reading him or hearing other people talk about him was when I was in university. I had friends who were twins, and we were all Canadian, and they were 2 guys, and they wore Superman and Captain America belt buckles. And I always remember giving them crap because I was like, we're Canadian. Why do you have these like really American belt buckles? And I met them the same year that I read Captain America. So when I think about being cognizant of Captain America, I always think of like their weird belt buckles that they wore.
This weird faculty of life that threw you into Captain America.
Yeah, this confluence that introduced me to Steve Rogers.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, where did you first meet Stephen Grant Rogers?
I think Captain America is, like you said, one of those heroes that you kind of always know about, like Superman and Batman. Like I kind of feel that you kind of know because you see them on enough T-shirts or whatever. But to be honest with you, there's 2 times when I first became cognizant of Captain America.
Okay.
One was the really, really crappy movies back in the early 90s that were direct-to-video where the Red Skull was Italian because it was...
Because why not?
Because I told you the story in this podcast. I grew up in a very small town area of Kansas, and the Walnut gas station where I lived had videos. They only had 20 videos. Most of the time, the bottom 10 always said the same. And one time, the top 10 was Captain America. And I was like, ooh, who's this guy? It looks like the American flag. So we got Captain America. I think even as a kid, I knew how terrible that movie was, but I was about superheroes, so I didn't care.
Did you love it anyway?
I don't think I ever loved that movie, no, because I think even as a kid, I was like, this movie's not good. It does not hold up. And who's this dude with the dripping red face? Doesn't make sense. But I really didn't get a strong appreciation for Captain America until the event Heroes Reborn. Because at that time was the first time that I picked up the 4 main Marvel titles, Avengers, Captain America, Iron Man, Fantastic Four. And I assume that we will eventually cover that in your lesson somewhere down the road, either part 1 or part 2.
Oh, we will.
But I actually bought every issue of Heroes Reborn, Captain America. I bought every issue of every Heroes Reborn title, and that was the book that made me like Captain America. And a lot of people out there are probably like, what the hell, that book's terrible. But when we talk about Heroes Reborn, I will defend it. There we go.
Love it. All right, let's move right along.
Into the History 101,
Yes.
where Professor Ashley, right here, is going to teach us all about Captain Stephen Grant Rogers.
There we go.
America.
So America. So like I said before, this is going to be in two chunks. So we're going to take this lesson from 1941 up until 1980. Part 2 will be 1980 to the modern era. So just so you know where to get on and off the Captain America train. And as always, we're going to talk a little bit about Cap's creation and some publication history before we get into the fictional character biography.
Got it.
So if you read Joe Simon's autobiography, My Life in Comics, which will be on our recommended reading page.
I will now.
He talks extensively about how he came up with the idea for Captain America, and he drew this original character sketch. And he said, and I quote, "I wrote the name Super American at the bottom of the page. No, it didn't work. There were too many, quote, supers around."
Superman.
Quote, "Captain America had a good sound to it. There weren't a lot of captains in comics. It was as easy as that. The boy companion was simply named Bucky, after my friend Bucky Pearson, a star on our high school basketball team." So that's how we get the idea.
That Bucky Pearson can sure throw those 3-pointers.
I just think it's interesting that these 2 big touchstones of Cap's identity, the name and the side character, just weird details from his life.
This weird guy named Bucky and Superman are the touchdowns of Captain America.
That's it. That's and basketball. So Martin Goodman was the publisher of Timely Comics, which would eventually go on to become Marvel Comics.
Indeed.
And he greenlit the Captain America book right away off that one little paragraph and the sketch with the name Captain America underneath it.
Fun fact, Timely Comics actually published a comic book called Marvel Comics.
Did they really?
Yeah, they did.
That's it. That's an awesome fact.
Yeah.
So during this time, most comics were anthology books, even books like Action Comics and Detective Comics, meaning that Batman and Superman would be like one story and then there would be several others. And Captain America was going to be the first one to focus on a solo character.
Interesting.
It is still an anthology, but it is 10 only Captain America stories, not Captain America and a cowboy and a Dracula story.
Yes, Batman used to share his Detective Comics with Fu Manchu.
Yeah.
Superman, we used to share it with like cowboys and Indian stories and like British imperialism stories. It was weird.
But Captain America was full-time. Bunch of Captain America stories.
That's right. Punch you in the face, American. That's how he worked his comics.
Exactly. And Joe Simon knew that since he was going to have to write an entire issue focused around one character, that he was going to need help from a strong artist. Enter Jack Kirby.
Jack the King Kirby.
King Kirby, one of arguably the most famous Marvel artists and DC artists of all time.
I don't know. I would make the argument possibly the most famous artist of all time in both companies.
Comics artist?
Yeah.
I will accept.
He worked both sides of the fence, so
He did.
Yeah.
He did. Thank him for New Gods. Kirby was not Simon's original choice. He actually had 3 other guys that he went after for Captain America, none of whom have resounded through the annals of comics history, interestingly enough.
Okay.
But he learned about the character and so emphatically wanted the job and went after Simon to get the job. He promised to meet all of the deadlines because they were harsher deadlines than any other ones in comics at the time.
Oh, because did he have to draw? Like he had to draw. Oh, okay. He had to draw
which had never been done
He had to draw
before.
every story in the anthology.
And most of the anthology stories are 12 to 16 pages long, so it's lengthy.
Yeah, they're thicker than normal comic books.
So Joe Simon was like, all right, kid, like if you want to do this, you can draw my book. And Jack Kirby was like, thanks, mister. And that's how Captain America came to be.
I don't think he sounded like that, but sure.
So a fun fact, in 1966, Joe Simon actually sued Marvel Comics and stated that he should own the copyright on Captain America because it was just about to come up on its 28-year expiration.
Yep.
And they wound up settling out of court, and Captain America stayed with Marvel Comics as he was created in development under a work-for-hire agreement, which is kind of your standard, I am a comics person working for a company creating comics for them.
Yeah, totally.
Whatever. And then in 1999, he filed a claim to copyright on Captain America under the provision to the Copyright Act in 1976. So 10 years later, it changed again, which allowed creators of original characters sold to major corporations to reclaim them after 56 years of a copyright term. So after 56 years, he went after Captain America again. Again, they settled out of court in 2003, with Marvel agreeing to pay him for merchandising and licensing of Captain America. Jack Kirby never saw any back profits off his work on Captain America, and he worked on Cap twice. More on that later.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Joe Simon getting all that crazy S.H.I.E.L.D. money.
Yeah. So that's all the craziness that led up to the creation of Captain America. So let's jump right into the fictional character biography. So Steve Rogers was born on, of course, July 4th, 1918, although sometimes 1920, depending on which writer you choose to believe.
It's been retconned a couple times, I think.
Yes, but it's usually one of those 2 dates.
Okay.
On the Lower East Side of Manhattan, which is a really cool neighborhood now, to Sarah and Joseph Rogers. And like any good New Yorker, his parents were poor Irish immigrants. His father died when Steve was but a wee child, and then his mother died of pneumonia when he was a teenager. And being orphaned early is what most later writers will attribute to Steve's close friendship with Bucky Barnes, but that's kind of a 1980s onward invention.
Yes, there's also been some retcons, and you might discuss this earlier, about how good of a father Steve Rogers' father actually was.
We're not going to talk about
that.
But there are implications that he beat his mom.
That Steve's father beat his mother, and that's the reason why Steve grew up so tough.
Yeah.
It does change. I do feel like every Captain America writer kind of goes back to the 1920s.
It's the most iconic story is the origin.
And tells like who he was before he got the super soldier powers.
Yeah, and they usually do the mirror plot where it informs what's happening. Yes, so by the early 1940s, Steve Rogers is a skinny fine art student at university, an unspecified university, specializing in illustration. And fun fact, in several stories, Steve Rogers is actually the artist of the Captain America comic book. And there are several of the Golden Age stories where Bucky is reading Captain America comic books drawn by Steve Rogers.
Yes, and there is an amazing Easter egg in the first Captain America movie where Peggy catches him drawing a goofy monkey in his notebook, and he flips through it and you see that he's been sketching. And that's my favorite Easter egg, I think, in all the Captain America movies.
Nice. So when the Nazis inevitably rise to power, Steve tries to enlist in the army, but of course, as we know, he is rejected due to his frailty. He's too skinny. But he keeps coming back and trying to re-enlist, and eventually attracts the attention of General Chester Phillips, with the most British name in the American Army, who is working on something called Project Rebirth. And Steve becomes a test subject for the U.S. Army's super soldier serum created by Dr. Joseph Reinstein. Jason, do you know Dr. Joseph Reinstein's real name?
I don't know his real name, but I'm going to guess it's Erskine.
That is a good guess. It is later retconned that he is Abraham Erskine, so it makes these origin stories a little bit confusing.
Okay, because there's 2 different doctors.
Yes, and the name retcon actually came in a novel called The Great Gold Seal, written by Ted White and published by Bantam Books in 1968. So it is a later retcon. But then Erskine becomes an important part of the mythology from that point onward, and we even see him in the movies.
And Erskine, is the Doctor, is played by Stanley Tucci?
Yes.
Is that right? By the way, I don't think we mentioned earlier in the beginning, if you haven't realized by now, we're doing this lesson because of Captain America Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
Don't know if you've heard of that movie.
It's this little event coming out.
That's the reason why we're talking about Captain America for 2 weeks. All right, sorry, back to the 40s?
Yeah, we're still in the mid-40s.
Okay, we're in the 40s, or we're 30s.
We're at about 40, 41.
Okay.
The war is broken out in Europe.
No.
As we all know, following an injection of super soldier serum, Steve emerges all muscly and strong and looking exactly like Chris Evans. It isn't that great. And the darker part of this story is that with the success of Steve's, super soldier-ness, this leaves Dr. Erskine confident in trying his procedure on other people, which leads to a lot of retroactive creation of other super soldiers in Marvel history. But that comes later on in the lesson. They usually wind up messed up. Nobody turns out as good as Captain America did.
Because there's people trying to recreate the Project Rebirth, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And in the first origin story that you see, the original origin, you see Steve receiving injections. It's a needle and it goes right into the vein. But in the 1960s, under the Comics Code Authority, which was basically a set of laws that they imposed on creating comic books, Marvel retconned the super soldier serum to being an orally administered formula, so like a drink, and they introduced the Vita ray, so the radiation, because that was better than shooting up drugs.
Because science.
Yeah, and
science.
The Captain America First Avenger movie does use kind of a mix of, you see the injections and they mention the Vita ray, so it marries the two origins, which I think is kind of nice.
That's cool.
And so now that we've gone over the basic Captain America origin story, you can see that it's always been more or less the same. There's a few little detail changes, and this isn't always something, if you listen to a lot of geek history lessons, it doesn't happen that much. A lot of characters get really hard retcons to their origins. It is just really impressive that this one was so good and so iconic that Captain America has, his origins basically stayed the same. Okay. He's always stayed in World War I. He's never had a roving timeline.
World War II.
Yep, that's right, World War II.
He had no part of World War I.
There's a lot of World Wars, guys.
That's Wonder Woman.
Yes. So Captain America is now fully formed. So let me tell you about the events of his first issue. Normally, I like to do a little more than that in these lessons. I'll tell you about their first 5 or 10. If you listen to Batman or Superman the Golden Age, you know that we did that. But Cap's first issue is so crazy that I'm just going to tell you a few of the stories in it.
All right.
And it's close to 100 pages long. So
wow.
I mentioned earlier that his book...
Was it still a dime?
I don't know. I don't have the cover pulled up right now.
Let's say yes.
If it wasn't a dime, maybe it was a quarter,
Ooh, that's expensive in those days.
So, I mean, you could buy a full dinner. So here are the events. I don't know. Inflation, guys. Here are the events of Captain America Comics #1. Case number 1, meet Captain America. A rumor goes...
No, you gotta, come on. You gotta announce that like in a 1930s radio voice.
Case number 1, meet Captain America.
There you go. I'll accept it.
Okay.
Buy war bonds.
Yeah, buy war bonds. A rumor goes around that the Nazis have infiltrated American camps. President Roosevelt gets FBI Director Grover to take care of the situation. They do this by discovering the Nazi, who's also known as Agent X-13, very typical Marvel name, and they follow him through a curio shop and into Dr. Reinstein's laboratory, which is like behind a panel, where they discover Steve Rogers getting injected with super soldier serum. Another Nazi spy shows up, kills Dr. Reinstein, and Steve chases the Nazi around until he runs into some equipment, gets electrocuted, and dies. Then, over the next couple months, Steve becomes Captain America, prevents a dam explosion, and performs heroic deeds. He then becomes a private in the Army, and Private Stephen Rogers gets assigned to Camp Lehigh, where he meets Bucky Barnes, who's the camp mascot and like 4 years old. Bucky discovers that Cap's true identity is Steve Rogers and automatically becomes his trusty sidekick.
He wasn't actually 4 years old, though.
No, he was like maybe 12 or 14.
He's 14, 15.
He's young.
Yeah.
He shouldn't be there.
No.
That's story number 1.
Well, that was story number 1?
That was story number 1.
Oh, my God.
It's like...
Can we talk about how insane that, like, they just accidentally walked through the curio shop?
President Roosevelt is a character in this, guys. It's amazing.
You have nothing to fear but SHIELD itself.
Basically. Okay.
Right.
Story number 2.
Story number 2. Wow. Now, okay, maybe this was a quarter because this is a lot. All right, here we go.
Okay. No man but Captain America can solve the riddle.
That's the name?
That's the name of the story.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, got it.
Villains/actors Sando and Omar psychically predict the future.
Wait. Sando?
Sando's his name. And he's like kind of brown, so it's a little bit racist.
That sounds like a hardware epoxy. Like, oh, you have a hole in your wall? Buy Sando.
Guys, welcome to the golden age. Okay, so villain/actors Sando and Omar psychically predict the future and a defeat for the Allies in battle. So
Okay.
Captain America and Bucky decide to take them on. The villains then predict the destruction of Hilltown Bridge. Not a real bridge. Disclaimer, not a real bridge.
Thank God.
And it is destroyed before Cap and Bucky arrive. Then, backstage in Sando's dressing room at another appearance are two Nazis who have captured Betty Ross, who you may know from Hulk stories.
Yeah.
Sando reveals that his predictions were fake in order to destroy American morale on the home front. So Cap and Bucky show up. They easily defeat the Nazis present and let Betty go free. Sando then pulls out a bomb, but Steve throws it out the window and the villains are captured.
Okay, I want to clarify a point here, and if you do not know the answer, that's totally fine.
Sure.
I'm going to assume that this is not the same Betty Ross from Hulk. I'm just going to assume that they happen to use the same name.
Well, according to all the links in the various sources that I searched,
They say it's the same?
They say it is the same character.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll just leave it there. If you guys know, you can always tell us online. That's surprising. Okay.
I mean, she just looks like, on the panel, she just looks like a lady.
The only reason I'm going to say it because, like, unless Stanley took the name, like, this is quite shocking that because this is 20 years before Marvel Comics.
I think it's probably just a name that was repeated, and everybody has retroactively decided it was the same character.
That's what I kind of think it is.
But according to the internet sources I looked at, it always went back to the same. It's this character from Hulk.
Okay, got it. Sure.
Okay, so as we all know,
So somebody was thrown out of a window.
yeah, the bomb. Sando
bomb?
put out the bomb, and the bomb was thrown out the window.
Oh, so he found the right time to get rid of a bomb.
Yeah, Batman couldn't handle
Yes,
it, but
Batman-
Captain America could do it.
All right.
And as we all know, being thrown out a window or being captured and given to the police are both things that Jason and I would like to avoid. So if you want to keep us on the right side of the window, head on over to patreon.com/Jawin, JAWIIN, and donate to get a super patriotic reward, why don't you? At the $3 level, you get Geek History Lesson a whole day early. And for $5, you get Geek History Lesson Extra, a complete second podcast each week. And this week, we're going to be talking about patriotic heroes.
Heroes.
Thank you to everyone who has donated so far. Now let's get back to punching Hitler right in his mug.
Every single cent that you guys help support us with over there goes right back into making this podcast better and better, and has helped to let us figure out the very fact that what we are doing right now, we are now doing video geek history lessons. We're trying a new thing.
Right.
That's specifically because of the Patreon, and we thank you all for it. Now, back to the 40s, and we're in the third story.
The third story of Captain America, number one.
This Captain America first comic book is like a phone book.
Yes. This one is called Captain America and the Chessboard of Death.
That's Marvel. I know you listen to this podcast. I expect that to be Captain America 4.
Okay.
Captain America on the Chessboard of Death.
So Rathcone, who is a Nazi spy master, of course,
Oh, we know those.
selects the members of the U.S. Army that he wants to destroy by using a giant chessboard, including Admiral Perkins, who we've never met before, but is evidently very important.
He's cool. He's a very important dude. He likes ships.
I guess.
Yes.
Cap and Bucky are attending Admiral Perkins' lecture, but when they show up, he's already dead on stage. So, of course, they capture the murderer, but their fellow spies kill him before Cap and Bucky can interrogate him and figure out what happened. They return to Camp Lehigh, and so Steve and Bucky are assigned guard duty on a visiting general. But he is also killed by Rathcone's men. Following this, Rathcone decides that Cap and Bucky need to die and sends Agent 13 from the very first story.
Oh, wow. Same issue.
After them, in the same issue.
Yep.
Yeah, 2 stories ago.
Yep.
The Bucky is captured and a ransom note is left for Cap to find. Cap frees Bucky, they defeat the spies and call the police.
I'm real saddened by Admiral Perky's death. That's what his friends called him. Admiral Perky? Admiral Perky.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
That actually almost sounds like the same story that the Joker perpetrated in Batman #1, how he would like go on the radio and he would be like, I'm going to kill you by midnight. And then he'd kill the person. That's very similar.
Well, Batman #1 was a year before this.
Yeah, it was.
So it could have been an inspiration.
Joe Simon.
4th story.
Oh, my God.
There's actually 7 stories. This is the last one I'm going to recap for you guys.
I'm already tired.
So the 4th story is called...
Has he beat Hitler yet?
No.
Oh, damn it.
And not for like 20 more years, dude.
20 years? What?
It takes a long time.
He doesn't beat Hitler till the 60s? World War II ends in 45.
He doesn't get de-iced until the 60s, so it's his own private war.
And Hitler stayed Okay.
So the fourth
So
story.
Captain America is quite ineffectual is what you're going to teach us here.
Whoa, he didn't kill Hitler.
It's very true. He couldn't do what the Inglourious Bastards did in 2 hours.
That's true.
Okay.
So the fourth story is called Captain America and the Riddle of the Red Skull.
Marvel Studios, I know you're listening. Captain America number 5, right there.
So Cap and Bucky drive Major Croy, who we've never met before, but is really important. They drive
He's
him home.
the cousin of Admiral Perky.
They're driving him home, and they leave him at home, and he's killed by the Red Skull, who's waiting for him.
Oh my God! Right.
Bucky tracks down Red Skull's hideout and is promptly captured.
Again, Bucky.
Cap soon discovers the hideout, frees Bucky, and then the Red Skull escapes. The next day at Camp Lehigh, several test planes go down in flames. That night, the Red Skull kills another visiting general and fights Captain America.
Okay.
He's unmasked, poisons himself, and dies.
Oh, so he's a normal dude in this story.
He is, just wearing a mask.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Did not know that about the Red Skull. Interesting.
Yeah, so I want everyone to know, like I said, there's 3 more stories that comprise this entire first issue, but you can already kind of see a pattern emerging here. Nazi villain is introduced, Bucky is kidnapped, Cap frees him. The next day at Camp Lehigh, the same Nazi villain shows up, kills an army general, Bucky and Cap defeat him, and the villain gets away. That's how you write a Captain America story in 1941.
That's also, I would say, how Golden Age stories were done. If we remember from our Superman Golden Age lesson, again, it was the same thing. Like Superman would encounter a problem, he would go undercover, he would like use his superpowers in a weird way, and then like throw the guy over an electric line. The guy would be like, I'm going to change my ways. I actually really want Marvel to make a miniseries called Camp Lehigh. And
that'd be a great Netflix series.
And kind of show us
Sebastian Stan could be in it.
Well, show us the adventures of Bucky and Captain America from a normal enlisted soldier's point of view.
Interesting.
I think it'd be an interesting series.
We will write it for you, Marvel.
There you go.
And I'd watch the heck out of that.
We know you listen, so go ahead.
Yes. So remember like 10 minutes ago when Dr. Reinstein, who was actually Dr. Erskine, was killed in the first appearance of Captain America?
Yeah, I do.
Well, this story, like I said, gets repeated a lot throughout Captain America's history.
Sure.
So we're going to talk about 2 specific instances about that.
Okay.
In Captain America number 109, published in January of 1969, and in number 225, published in September of 1978, they both retcon the death of Dr. Erskine because he doesn't get killed by the spy.
Okay.
Basically by having Steve punch the Nazi spy into a collection of machinery and killing him like 3 pages earlier, which allows Erskine to live and continue his experiments.
Okay.
So in the original timeline where Erskine dies, the U.S. Army can't make any more super soldiers because he didn't take good enough notes. Legit, that's the reason. His notes weren't good enough, so they couldn't copy it.
Well, I don't know if you know, but there was a pencil shortage in the 40s.
I mean, I'm making that up. There was shortages, so I'm going to say that is true and historically accurate.
We don't have enough nickel. We can't write down notes.
So they decided to make Captain America their super heroic patriot and focus on him and focus him on taking down the Red Skull, because the Red Skull, they decided that even though he murdered himself, they retconned that really quickly because he was a really great villain and had a really good look, which is why it hasn't changed much. So being an artist, of course, Steve designs his own patriotic outfit, and during his adventures with Bucky, he has given the iconic vibranium shield that is also patriotically colored.
Given to him by Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
That is correct. Yes. Steve and Bucky are eventually sent overseas where they fight the Axis both on their own and through the original Invaders team. And even though I'm talking about the Invaders now, they're not actually created until the 1970s, but they're retconned back into the character history. So they the story happens in 1940, but the publishing history was until 1970. We're going to do a little bit of skipping around like
there's
that.
There's a lot
to try and make the narrative smooth.
Yeah, there's a lot of retconning in Captain America.
Yep.
Which makes sense as he is a character that has always been out of time. I think it's one of those things that when you become a writer on Captain America, you want to touch
all aspects of the character.
Well, I think you want to touch that original pocket of time. And I think so there's some part of you as a writer, especially when you're working on Captain America, where you're like, I want to touch that original Joe Simon, Jack Kirby run.
I mean, it's the character is iconic, and he's lasted from their original incarnation for a reason.
Yeah. And
in case you didn't know, the original Invaders team is a super team made up of Namor, the original Human Torch, Captain America, and Bucky.
I love that team. The original Human Torch is it Jim or John? It's a Hammond. His last name is Hammond. It's either Jim or John.
It's John Hammond.
John Hammond, and he is an android.
He is an android.
Yep.
He's a really cool look. When fighting in the U.S. Army, Steve and Bucky were members of the 1st Battalion, 26th Infantry Regiment, known as the Blue Spaders. Not a real regiment.
Nope.
Well, not a real name, but cool. During World War II, Cap fights several superheroic foes, including the Waxman, the Hangman, the Fang, the White Talon, and the Black Death, which are some of the goldenest Goldie Age names I've ever heard. I love them. And him and Bucky were also active members of the Sentinels of Liberty, which is essentially the official Captain America fan club.
And fun fact, when Captain America in the late 90s had a spinoff title written and drawn by Dan Jurgens, it was called Captain America, Sentinel of Liberty.
There you go.
Yep.
So all the way from the 40s. So in late April of 1945, when World War II was coming to an end, for all of you history nerds out there, hi Nina, Cap and Bucky were battling Baron Zemo. Baron Zemo has a dumb purple hat and is the leader of the Masters of Evil.
It's not a hat, it's a mask.
It looks like a ski cap.
Baron Zemo, he's the guy with the pink face, and the stupid thing about him is not his face mask. It's the fact that he wears white fur.
He's got like a pimp coat.
He has like liger fur on his shoulder. His shoulder pads are made out of white fur. But Baron Zemo, by the way, eventual leader of the Thunderbolts. Thank you very much.
There you go. And villain...
Or his son, actually. His son. Never mind.
Villain of the Captain America Civil War movie.
Yep.
Zemo launches a drone plane with an armed explosive on it. Of course, heroically, Captain America and Bucky chase it down. Bucky tries to defuse the bomb, but it explodes mid-air. Cap is hurled into the freezing waters of the North Atlantic. Both are presumed dead. Lesson over.
And if you want to find more about Bucky, you can go back and listen to our Geek History lesson on James Buchanan Barnes, the Winter Soldier.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good job, Ashley.
Yeah, all right, cool. Great lesson. I thought this was going to be 2 parts. You lied.
I did lie. Of course, it is later revealed that neither of them are dead, although one takes a lot longer than the other one.
Comics!
So throughout the rest of the 1950s, Captain America appears sporadically through some throwback war comics, but the post-World War II United States, in that world, most of the comic readers were not interested in World War II stories anymore. They were like, we done moved past this.
We beat Hitler. What else do you want?
Yes.
Yeah.
He underwent a brief retcon around 1956, but those stories were later retconned out of existence in the Silver Age due to the fact that they were wickedly unpopular.
Okay.
This is not Steve Rogers, but I'm going to tell you about it because it will be important later. William Burnside, new fictional character, was a history graduate enamored with Captain America and the mythos around him. He has his appearance surgically altered to resemble Steve Rogers and legally changes his name to Steve Rogers, becoming the new, quote, 1950s Captain America. He is really violent and really silly. He'll be important later.
He's also very racist.
Yes.
And conservative.
So skipping forward about a decade, Avengers #1 is published in September of 1963.
When the swinging 60s, baby.
Heck yes. And although Steve is not part of the original lineup, which was Thor, Wasp, Ant-Man, Hulk, and Iron Man, they do discover his frozen body in a block of ice where it has been since 1945.
You know how they discovered it?
Please.
Namor.
Yes. Namor will become important
Namor,
later.
the Submariner, part of the Invaders. He's the first mutant on Earth, or he's one of the he's a mutant.
He's
Fantastic Four character. He picked up this chunk of ice and threw it at the Avengers, and the chunk of ice had Captain America.
It's a capsicle.
Yeah, it's literally a capsicle.
Like in my freezer.
Yep.
So it turns out that Steve was able to survive these 18 years due to the enhancement he received as a result of the super soldier serum, because comics.
Isn't that crazy to think that when that issue was originally published, he'd only been in the ice
18
years. Now move forward to the movies and it's 60.
Yeah. I mean, 18 years is still a significant amount of time to be out of the world.
It's actually, no, it's more than 60. It's 55.
There you go.
Yeah.
He's an AARP old person.
Yeah.
Steve is confused by the world he awakes to, and for lack of anything else to do with himself, he accepts membership into the Avengers and quickly assumes leadership and has consistently been a member or supporting leader, or supporting leader ever since then.
Most of the way through.
Yeah. With exceptions, depending on the team, but he's almost always in a position of leadership.
Yes.
And during this time, Steve is plagued by guilt over being unable to save Bucky because Bucky was so beautiful. And he takes Rick Jones under his wing during this time. And Rick Jones has this whole thing about, like, call me Bucky, give me Bucky's costume, I'll be your Bucky, Bucky, because Bucky's so beautiful, everybody wants to be him.
And Rick Jones, if you don't know, is kind of the eternal sidekick of the Marvel Universe.
Yes.
He was the kid that was in the test area, the bomb test area that Bruce Banner ran out and protected. And because he protected Rick Jones, that is the reason why Bruce Banner got hit with the Gamma Bomb.
And became the Hulk. Eventually, Rick does win Steve over and he gets to put on the Bucky costume, but he's scared out of the role by an encounter with the Red Skull, who's impersonating Steve Rogers at the time, which he does a couple different times.
Of course.
So then that's kind of the end of that.
We've all done it.
Yeah. Steve and the Avengers spend a lot of their Silver Age time fighting Loki, Kang the Conqueror, Baron Zemo and the Master of Evil, Wonder Man, and Count Nefaria. These are all classic villains.
Wonder Man, who was a villain, later becomes an adventure.
It later inspires the Vision.
Yes.
And many of these characters you can still see appearing in modern age comics and even in the movies, which is kind of cool. Steve is reunited with Nick Fury, and it is retconned that they worked together during World War II, and then he often works for S.H.I.E.L.D. because him and Nick are so close. Through Nick Fury, Steve meets Sharon Carter, who is the niece of Peggy Carter, with whom he eventually becomes romantically involved. More on that to come.
Yeah.
And we do have geek history lessons on both of those characters if you'd like to know more.
We do.
And fun fact, during the 1976 Captain America solo series, original series artist Jack Kirby returns to draw this series. And this is the art that you will find most often associated with Kirby's Captain America work. There's a very famous Omnibuy that will be in our recommended reading, and this is strictly his 1970s run. Whenever you see a classic Captain America picture, it is one of his covers from the 1976 series.
Nice. Really, not the original series, it's this one.
No, it is all
That's
this one.
And I believe it's somewhere around this time was where they introduced the idea that Captain America was drawing his own comic book.
Yes. During this third Captain America solo series, Steve meets Sam Wilson.
3. Wow.
Yeah, this is the third one.
Because the 50s isn't 2.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So you have originals 1, 50s is 2. This is Captain America Volume 3. That would be how it would break down nowadays.
I understand now, teacher. Thank you.
You're so welcome. He meets Sam Wilson. And the cool thing about Sam Wilson is he's the first African-American superhero in Marvel Comics.
Mainstream.
And you might say, but Black Panther's the first African character.
Yes.
Sam Wilson is African American. Sam Wilson, of course, is the Falcon.
The Falcon.
They established not only a personal friendship, but a professional partnership as well. And you will see a lot of this in the modern era moving forward, talking about their relationship, specifically with Sam. And they reflect this in the movies, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, Anthony Mackie playing an awesome job, Sam Wilson.
He does a great job. In real time, Steve deals.
Hey, we haven't got to the Steel lesson yet.
Oh
man.
My God. Steve deals with the Watergate scandal.
Wow, we're already in the 70s.
Well, yeah, 1976 series.
We pushed.
By
Okay,
Jack Kirby.
my bad. I thought we were still in the swinging 60s.
No, we're in the swinging, the sexy 70s.
No, we're in the very Nixon sucks 70s.
Right, because Watergate scandal. For those who don't know, President Nixon was caught basically tapping people's phones.
Not really, but
I'm trying to.
Yeah,
simplify.
Simplify. The Watergate scandal more has to do with that hotel and the Republican. There was a group of people that broke into a room in the Watergate hotel, broke into some files that they were not supposed to have. They eventually learned that Nixon may have sent them there.
Yeah. And due to this scandal, Steve is so shaken and so uncertain about his identity and his loyalty to his country that he abandons the mantle of Captain America and becomes Nomad. The choice of the name Nomad, I think, is pretty obvious. A nomad is somebody without a country or a solid home. This only lasts for 4 issues, so maybe a month. So he's not that shaken.
It didn't hurt that much. Okay.
But during this time, several heroes rush to try and take on the Captain America identity, which I think is pretty hilarious. And I'm going to start pointing out storytelling tropes in Captain America because they become more and more obvious the further through his history that we get.
Okay.
As soon as Steve Rogers gets sad and quits being Captain America, which happens a couple times, there's 6 dudes ready to take over his place. I guess it's so high and mighty to be Captain America.
Hey.
Everyone wants to be Cap.
Everybody.
It's like Batman.
Looks good in that costume.
I don't know.
Everybody.
I don't know if anybody looks good in that costume.
Okay. Everybody wants to throw that frisbee. The frisbee of the shield.
Frisbee.
Yeah, I missed that. I said it wrong.
Yeah.
I ruined the joke. Thank you, America.
Of course, though, Steve realizes that the identity as Captain America, that identity could be a symbol of American ideals and not its government.
I need to be a symbol, Alfred. That's where
you're not wrong.
I immediately thought of Batman.
And it is a personal conviction epitomized when he later comes and confronts a corrupt army general who's attempting to manipulate him by appealing to his loyalty. And he says to this army general, "I am loyal to nothing, General, except the American dream." And I think this line...
Why didn't he say freedom?
I didn't write it. I think this epitomizes Captain America and Steve Rogers in particular.
Yes.
Like, he's not loyal to the country. He's not loyal to the leader. He's not loyal to the government. He's loyal to the ideal that anyone can come here, anybody can build themselves up, and this is the greatest country where everyone is equal. Mm-hmm. And I think the fact that he becomes besties with the first African-American hero, like, kind of personifies that in a really nice way. So having returned to his rightful place as Captain America, Steve Rogers undergoes a personal blow when Sharon Carter is killed while under Dr. Faustus's mind control.
And that won't be the first time that Sharon dies.
And won't also be the first time that she's under Dr. Faustus's mind control.
Nope, that
and
happens multiple times.
Won't be the first time that she does something kind of questionable under Dr. Faustus's mind control.
All right.
But more on that in next week's episode. And I think it's really interesting that this is such a minor story beat. I read this issue.
Was Sharon getting control?
Sharon, it's like two strips. Like, it's such a small. It's
two panels?
No, it's like it's kind of. Classic, like, Silver Age.
It's like half a page.
It's like half a page.
Okay.
Yes, a lot of Silver Age books are kind of they look like strips laid
like
out
comics.
on the page.
Yeah.
So it looks like two. So about half a page. Like, it's such a minor part of A, the overall plot of the story, and then B, the physical space on the page. Yet it is something that a lot of writers will come back to as a touchstone, as a way to hurt Cap or to give a blow to his character following a great victory. Mm-hmm. Like I said, that's something that we'll see in next week's episode, because the death of Sharon Carter brings us up to 1980.
What?
And that's going to be the end of today's lesson on Mr. the Captain America.
All right, class, attention. Salute the flag. All right. Wrong hand. Thank you. Ashley used the wrong hand.
I'm not American.
Salute the flag and give me 20 push-ups. There you go. All right. I don't know where I was going with it. I was in the Army like Cap, so I'm trying to throw it out there. So we're in 1980 now, and you said lesson over.
Lesson over.
We don't get to find out how Captain America reacts to Ronald Reagan.
I don't know if we even talk about Ronald Reagan.
I don't think they do.
Reagan is not like Nixon. He's not a president with a lot of sway over the superhero community, because it's interesting, because from about the 80s onward, all the American leaders are fictional characters.
Yes.
I don't know if that has to do with the way the press changed, but in a lot of the Golden and Silver Age stuff, they deal with real world leaders, and DC Universe as well. And after that, they're just like, let's just make up a generic dude or lady to talk to.
Yes, yeah. Well, I kind of lead credence to that, because the comic book writers nowadays, especially in the 80s for modern times, you don't want to blow up, like, let's say Topeka, Kansas, and that city doesn't actually blow up. So you kind of want to move it by having a fictional president. I think shows you that these heroes are not quite in our world.
That's true. If you're going to drop a giant floating city on someone, it's going to be a fake town in Oklahoma, really.
Or the Avengers are going to go fight in a fake European country that nobody's heard of.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so that's the end of this part one of Captain America, correct?
It is. So come back next week for more patriotism, more Bucky, and more Frisbee Shields.
Wow. Well done, Professor Ashley. Well done.
Thanks.
So we have to wait.
Jason.
We're on a cliffhanger. Is there any hint? Can you give us a quick tease before we close out this podcast of something that we're going to learn, something, or just maybe you can tease our interest about something that we're going to learn in part two? I mean, there's 7 days. It's going to be a long time.
Okay. Spoiler alert.
For part two.
Bucky might not be dead. Mic drop.
What? Holy crap.
And there might be a silver arm with a red star involved. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, man. Anybody that's never seen a Marvel movie might be completely shocked right now.
Yeah.
And if you're still completely shocked, then friends, I think you should head on over to iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud, where you can find Geek History Lesson every single week. We're going to teach you a new lesson. And guys, go over there and leave us a rating and a review because it helps other listeners find us and search algorithms like you. I know I stress that every podcast, but it's the only way that you can unite us
as a country.
As a country, as a podcast country. And it's the only way that Geek History Lesson, we're going to find our falcon. It's the only way. It's the only way we're going to find our falcon. By the way, if you want to be awesome, like our awesome TAs from this very episode, Ashley, who were the three that suggest this episode again?
Tumblr user as subtle as a splinter, James Steinberg, and his awesome son, Tobias.
If you want to be just as awesome as them and suggest a future lesson, maybe the falcon, which we've never done, where can they do that, Ashley, on social media?
Well, you can go to facebook.com/geekhistorylesson. Of course, you can communicate us in various ways there. Or you can go to geekhistorylesson.com. All of our asks and comments are open.
Yes, and you can complain to us on Twitter about our misrepresentation of facts about the presidents. You can do that to me at Jawin, Jawin, and you can do that where, Ashley, for you on Twitter?
At Ashley B. Robinson.
And don't forget, you can watch this Geek History Lesson video on youtube.com/Jawin, Jawin. And if you don't want to be done with Geek History Lesson, then you should run on over to patreon.com/Jawin, become one of our $5 patrons, and you get to listen to more Geek History Lesson right then and there. All right, thank you guys all for listening. I'm Jason. You will wield when I throw my shield, Inman.
I am Ashley the Spring Spy Robinson.
And Professor Ashley, will you please close out this part 1 of the Red, White, and Blue Hero out?
Attend hut. Class is dismissed.
Attend hut?
I don't know. That's what like army guys say in TV.
It's attention.